everybody. Welcome to the Pop Culture Show. I said that so loud, I woke up the dog. But hopefully, we can wake up some other stuff today. All your little tarot senses should be tingling because this is our second Pop Culture episode about tarot. And it's episode number 20. I feel like we should have a party. We should have some balloons or some cocktails or something. But this is a show I've been looking forward to for a long time. I'm Lilith Dorsey, your co-host, and my other co-host is over there. What's your name?
Who am I? I am Jason Winslade, and I am pleased to be the co-host of the Pop Culture Show for the last 20 episodes this season, and we're looking forward to a well-deserved hiatus and and rebuilding for something bigger and better for season 3.
Right. A little hiatus for hot fun in the summertime, right? Like so.
Festival
But there's
season.
always the back episodes to catch up on, so please make sure you check that out. There's a whole playlist on YouTube, but I am really, really excited for today's show. I think I got you a little bit when I told you we were going to be talking about tarot and reality TV. I think that's a little bit of a guilty pleasure for a lot of us. Some of us wouldn't watch it without their eyeballs falling out. I think you might be in that other category, Jason, but I don't know. One of my godkids, my students, got me hooked on 90 Day Fiance and some of the others. So I figured I would check it out, and I like it. There's a whole bunch of Schadenfreude in there, so I think I'm happy I'm not these people on these shows. And
Well, to be fair, when we first really met and talked was when I was doing a paper on reality TV and the occult. When I did the Mad World show paper at that conference in Boston, and met Fiona Horn as part of that, and she was part of the subject of my paper. So I have some reality show credit, although that was an odd reality show back in 2004. But since then, reality shows have exploded on, Bravo and Learning Channel, although I'm not sure what we're learning. And and Netflix and Hulu and Max and all the things. There's reality everywhere you look. Reality. So
of course.
tell us about what some of these tarot appearances were. I watched a few clips, but I think we had a sort of a general category of how they fell. But
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot of different things that we're talking about. I sent you a couple of clips, some from the 90 Day Fiance franchise. It's such a huge franchise at this point. There's 90 Day the Other Way, there's 90 Day Happily Ever After, there's 90 Day Diaries. For me, the fact, though, that a lot of these, 90 Day Fiance had a Santera on, practicing Lukumi. And I thought that was really interesting, and then we have these characters like Ashley and some of the other ones on 90 Day Fiance that are tarot readers as a business. You go to their Instagram, they've got thousands and thousands of followers. They've got an entire sort of, I don't know if you would call it a cult, but definitely witchy, if that fits into the category, brand where they're talking about these kinds of things, talking about the cards, and that definitely gets played out in the show. And one of the things I wanted to talk about, like the way that sometimes it's positioned as always being right, it's almost positioned as a divinity, whereas, oh, the cards have said this, the cards have spoken, right? Like those TV shows we used to watch when we were a kid. So the oracle has spoken, this is what's going to happen. And I think one of the scenes, right?
yeah.
one of the scenes I asked you to watch was the wedding where Ashley and Manuel, I think it is, are getting married and it's supposed to rain and they're there, trying to plan a beach wedding. And she just takes out the cards and she's like, well, we're getting married whether it's raining anyway. And I love this ambiguity that she allows to it while also sort of removing herself from any kind of agency in the situation. What's going to happen is going to happen. So, what did you think about this whole scenario?
Well, I was just thinking just in general in terms of like how witches and pagans have shown up in reality TV. I was thinking of the wife swap show from a few years back where there were a couple of times
Yes.
where it was like a Christian, family with a pagan family, and like the witch taught the Christian kids how to do tarot and things like that. So there is this interesting element that gets thrown in there. There were two categories it seemed like these fell into. One was okay, we're gonna bring in a tarot reader to in order to create a drama for a scene, and it's like we're bringing in a professional for fun purposes. And in the one scene, I'm trying to remember what the other show was. It's at a party and it's a woman who's dressed up, and she's obviously like just trying to work a party, and they're kind of like messing with her a bit, and she's just like rolling her eyes a little. And then the other one was like, oh, she's like a personal friend or personal reader that they brought in to like give them the lowdown. It's like, oh, this is so accurate because so and so is really a catty bitch or whatever.
Yeah, that's definitely the subtext,
Yeah,
but I still think in a way it's interesting to me because if it had been that person even 10 years ago, it would have been somebody who was, I think, a lot less normalized than we're bringing in a friend. I
yeah,
mean, the reader in that case looks like it could be your next door neighbor, somebody
yeah.
you ran into at Walmart, like that. It's just,
Right.
I thought was interesting.
Right. Whereas the party, there's definitely a performance happening in the sense of their
Hmm.
role being played. Whereas, yeah, I think that was really interesting in that Selling Sunset scene where yeah, it looked like it could have been one of their friends. She's reading their palms, then also doing the card reading. So yeah, definitely normalized in a really interesting way.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I just think it's interesting. And I think that it is getting normalized both from a visual perspective and from this kind of, oh, now we have one of the fiance people in the sense of Ashley from 90 actually being a reader, actually having it be a viable thing. There's a couple of scenes, I don't know if I sent you the clips, but there's a couple of scenes where she's kind of trying to explain to her fiance slash husband and his very Latin Christian family and relations, extended family, clergy, and things like that, that this is what she does. And they're sort of just telling her, well, maybe not say that, or maybe stop doing that. It's not an aggressive attack against it, but there's definitely like, oh, well, how are you going to be married to a Christian? Or how are you? Again, I think playing on some of these themes that you said in the wife swap, where there's Christianity or traditional religion on one side and this kind of witchy paganism on the other side. And as far as that side is concerned, never the twain shall meet, right?
Right.
Like just either stop it or give up with it. And I think it's interesting because too, a lot of these are at the beginning of their relationship and stuff. So it's not really the issue where we're talking about what are we going to do about kids? What are we going to do about whatever. And Manuel makes me laugh because all the time in 90 Day Fiance, she's just saying things like, you need a cleansing, your energy is dirty. And then she'll like give him a bath with all the herbs and waters and things like that.
Well, I mean, as you say, it's played as a point of tension, um,
Sure.
so that that there's it's showing also it's showing that this is how she copes, and this
Right.
is her self-help mechanism, and it's and that makes I would assume that makes for interesting reality TV, that this is the language that she speaks that can then be conveyed to her partner, but also create that tension, because he sort of rolls his eyes a bit, is like, oh, these cards must tell you the truth all the time, right? Like he has this sort of sarcasm going on.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, I mean, I don't know, I've never seen this show, I don't know what the premise is. Like 90 days, it means that they get married, they it's not like, because I've seen the arranged marriage shows, and those are bizarre.
Yes, no, this is everybody's going through the K-1 visa process, which the United States gives you 90 days from when you land on US soil to get married. So this is sort of an intense look at those 90 days of this person's coming from wherever they are, somewhere else in the world, to the United States, negotiating. I think that's why I like it as an anthropologist, right? Like, because they're negotiating all these differences between the other culture, be it Latin America or Asia or Africa very often.
That makes a lot more sense that it's specifically about cultural differences from this very personal context.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, it would make sense that tarot is part of that. Although it's funny that is from. I mean, this one is, I assume, is American, right? And
yeah, the tarot reader is American. In the series, the Santera is American. She's from New York. I mean, I don't know what her heritage is, generations back, but she's born and raised in New York. So it's interesting because, again, it's usually the outsider that's scripted as not understanding about this open spirituality, paganism, occult, witchcraft, magic, whatever we want to call it.
Because the ultimate thing about representation, right, is like we want to see ourselves on the screen, and whether that's racial or sexual orientation, or in this case, for lack of a better term, spiritual. I think that's a thing that appeals to people. We're going to talk to Dr. Richard Kaczynski, who's a very well-known occult author, author of, I know him most for author of Perturabo, the Aleister Crowley biography. He's just come out with a new book. I'm sure he'll mention that as well. And he's going to talk about one of the things that he does as a hobby is to track appearances of specifically the Crowley Thoth deck in pop culture, and he's going to share with us some of what he found.
We are so excited today to welcome Dr. Richard Kaczynski, author, famous magician, and somebody that has been a friend of both of ours for some time now. So welcome, welcome.
Oh, thank you for having me on. It's an honor.
One of the things that you do is and I see this on social media, is that you track appearances of the Thoth deck in pop culture, whether it's comics or TV or movies or things like that. And I'm a big fan of that archival work.
It's certainly been an interesting journey for me as well. I think the most interesting thing about it is the degree to which the community is kind of signed on to help. I mean, just kind of volunteer every time someone sees something, the Thoth Tarot in some TV show or movie or album cover or comic book or whatever. I'll get an email, or someone will tag me on social media. And more often than not, because I've been at this for a while, I've got most of these things identified. But I'm just so grateful though that people are like thinking of me and saying, hey, in case you don't have it, because I would really hate to miss something. And I think one of the most mind-blowing things about this is that even to this day, having been doing this for about 25 years now, oh my God, has it been that long?
Wow.
But things still turn up from like the 80s and 90s. People would be watching some random TV show and go, hey, wait a minute, what's that? And it's those things that make me think there may still be more occurrences hiding somewhere in in some TV show or something that no one has watched, in 20 years. But it's, turned up in places from like the X-Files, Married with Children, Northern Exposure, to Euphoria, and that recent TV program. So it's surprising all the places it turns up.
Yeah, I was thinking you had a post once about it showing up on Heart to Heart. I was thinking,
right? Married with Children.
I mean, who was the card reader in Married with Children? Like, who was Peg reading her cards or something?
Yeah, I don't recall the name of the actress off the top of my head, but it's basically the scene takes place in the Bundy's living room, and someone's doing a tarot card reading, and Ted, of course, is very skeptical and scoffing at the whole thing until some unhappy looking cards turn up for him, and then suddenly he's very concerned. Yeah.
Drama.
But the appearance of tarot cards is often accompanied by some sort of a fortune teller.
Well, I think it's funny
Have
that
you seen a change over the years? Because I feel like we were talking about in the beginning, like the tarot card readers, the fortune tellers seem to be more exotic, and lately they seem to be more normalized. I was just wondering if that plays out in what you've seen.
Hmm. That's kind of hard to say. One of the tropes, oddly enough, that seems to come up is in a couple of the early appearances of the Thoth Tarot in association with fortune tellers, is that the fortune tellers often are in these few instances. There's this, again, subset of episodes where the fortune teller is also like a stripper, an exotic dancer, or something they do on the side. And there's actually a couple of places where that plays out in a couple of adult films, shall we say. So it's, but yeah, I mean, all sorts of, the tropes vary, from, the exotic to the kind of odd and mysterious to just kind of the everyday. And there's always, the sorts of films where people play with the tarot and just look at the deck, and bad things start to happen to them, as is the case with that tarot movie that just came out,
right.
kind of perpetuating those sort of silly stereotypes.
But have you noticed any particular pattern in terms of their choice to use specifically the Thoth deck as opposed to a more general, Rider-Waite deck or something like that? Or is it just that deck is more popular, or what it is? Why Thoth deck?
Yeah, again, obviously, the artistic directors aren't available for me to interview.
Sure.
And I think it's true that the Rider-Waite-Smith deck is probably, I don't know, unquestionably the most popular deck in the world. I mean, I see you've got a Spider-Man and Doctor Strange Marvel team up there behind your shoulder with the Fool card based on the Rider-Waite-Smith deck. And so I think that's the deck you're going to see most often.
Deck over here.
Oh, yeah, and sometimes you only see the back of the deck, but I chose, because of my background of Crowley Flame and all of that, I decided I wanted to zero in on the Thoth Tarot, but also to kind of broaden this, not just to film, but also to television, comic books, music videos, album covers, and things like that. So any place in popular culture where you might see this crossing over of these occult symbols into the mainstream. And while the Thoth Tarot isn't as popular or as well known as the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, I do think the Thoth Tarot deck has a certain appeal. There is a very modern and exotic sort of look to it that's very different from the sorts of standard decks, which tend to be more nostalgic. They tend to be, kind of that sort of medieval style sort of deck, kind of emulating the appearance of the old things, old tarot decks. But with the Thoth Tarot, Frida Harris was very much about wanting to create a tarot deck that was modern, that incorporated, surrealism, cubism, Art Nouveau, projective geometry, and all sorts of things. And so while Aleister Crowley kind of specified what the elements that he wanted in the cards, and they worked really hard to kind of fit in what was done with the Golden Dawn color correspondences and so on. It was really Frida Harris who kind of injected this very modern sort of look to it. And I think for certain applications in pop culture and whatnot, that's just a much more appealing option. But then you have other uses like Alan Moore's graphic novel Promethea, which is this 32 issue miniseries comic book that is basically an initiatic sort of walk through the Kabbalistic tree of life. And he very much leans on Crowley and Thelema and Kenneth Grant and the Typhonian tradition, all this other stuff, and Austin Osman Spare. And so the use of Thoth Tarot imagery just kind of goes hand in hand with you know, Alan Moore's vision, you know, as the creator. So I think reasons for using the Thoth Tarot can vary quite a lot, but I think it's unquestionably one of the more striking options out there if you want something that's really eye-catching and modern looking. And also the symbols in it can also be exotic if that's what you're looking for.
Yeah, it definitely has a more so cinematic quality almost that is going to look cooler on the screen, you know. So I mean that makes a lot of sense. And yeah,
and sometimes it's just in the background too. I mean, like
right.
in there's like an X-Files episode where I think in this particular episode, you know, the X-Files have been shut down, and you know, Mulder is coming back to his desk and everything's covered in plastic, and he pulls the plastic back, and then he has this tool time, you know, girl calendar on his cork board, and he pulls it down to flip the page up. And when he pulls the calendar down, you see the back of the Thoth Tarot on his corkboard as well. And that's it. You know, there's no explanation for why Mulder has the Thoth Tarot stuck to his corkboard. It's just there, and then blink and you miss it sort of moment. And there's a lot of times like that, but you know, it's those are half the fun. You're just watching, you know, I'm just one of those people who be watching, you know, a documentary or a reality show or a movie or whatever, and they walk into an occult bookstore. I'm like, wait, that's the Castle edition of Magic and Theory and Practice. You know? And people are like, wow, you know, so like freeze frame, and we're like, well, what else is there? So that's the thing, you just never know. I mean, is the set dresser just doing their own thing, or is, you know, or the producers and the filmmakers actually aware of this, or are they just going along with it because, you know, they trust the set decorator? You know, I have no doubt that like in you know, Hellraiser 2, where you've got a portrait of Crowley and stuff, that was kind of thought out, because you do see a lot of occult symbolism in the background of the various characters in that series of films.
So what's your favorite sighting, Bill, that of all the ones that you've cataloged, or one you just aren't so happy about?
Oh gosh, that's hard to say. I think I might have to go back to one of the very first ones, and that's an interesting bit of history as well, because, you know, the Thoth Hero deck was created in the late 30s, early 40s, but because of this happening during World War II, and with paper rationing and all of that, there wasn't really a way for Aleister Crowley and Frieda Harris to get the deck printed, and there are other logistical problems, you know, just, you know, the making of color plates for this deck was very expensive at the time and so on. And it wasn't until the early 70s, about 1971, 1972, that the first Thoth deck was actually manufactured. And almost instantly it starts showing up in TV. And there was this interesting double header. If you turned on to ABC TV back in 1972, one Sunday night, you would have seen the Thoth Tarot in an episode of Macmillan and Wife, which was this detective show. But also there was an episode of The Night Gallery that was called The Return of the Sorcerer. And it features Vincent Price hiring a scholarly Bill Bixby to translate passages from the Necronomicon for him. And the cards are just these huge panels decorating the set, and you know, and Bill Bixby is translating in this gorgeous temple, and it you know, it makes me feel like, you know, the occultists on TV always have much better temples than we do in real life. But it's, you know, aspirational goals, you know. But
Yes.
you know, Bill Bixby, you know, who I know from, you know, shows like The Courtship of Eddie's Father, or that TV show The Magician, you know, where he's actually playing a stage magician. They have him like translating the Necronomicon, is hilarious. But also to see Vincent Price just mugging, you know, next to these, you know, peeking out from behind this gigantic, you know, wall-sized picture of the Ace of Discs or whatever, is just hilarious. It's just the best. And then there's also a goat, so what's not to like, you know?
I want to see that episode too. That's great.
Oh, it's a good one. It's hard to pick a favorite, but that's the one that like comes immediately to mind because it's just so iconic to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
This kind of imagery obviously is again very popular in like heavy metal and death metal bands and things like that. And there's just one example is the band Behemoth, who actually has lyrics that are very thelemic in nature, and their music videos often will refer to the Thoth Tarot. And so, in that sense, I think it's, again, very much intentional in trying to embrace that mystique, and, whether it's, and other bands as well. I don't know whether it's trying to embrace kind of the mystique, the bad boy image around Crowley or whatnot, because there is, again, that whole pop culture idea, misinformed though it may be, of Crowley being this wicked person, and and so on. And a lot of times in the areas of heavy metal, there's the trappings of these things, but without the actual practice. But again, more and more, I think we're seeing people who actually are acknowledging Crowley as an inspiration. There's been like a whole slew of music projects coming out recently where the artists are acknowledging that they're fans of Crowley, and this is why their lyrics are Crowley inspired, or their music, or their videos, or what have you. And for me, I think what's interesting about this is that again, the Rider-Waite-Smith deck being the #1 tarot deck in the world, and its imagery is kind of seeped out there into our popular conscience. You see certain cards, exactly what it is. It's a tarot deck and what it means. And the Thoth Tarot deck, I would argue, is the second most popular deck out there in the world. I mean, there have been so many different printings, publications, guidebooks, calendars, and so on. And so to kind of document the extent to which the Thoth Tarot is becoming part of our popular consciousness, or our vocabulary of imagery in the mainstream, is really fascinating to me.
One of the reasons we did this series is because I have a new tarot book coming out, and I definitely wanted to include that. They let me use the Millennium Thoth Tarot, so there we go. So that's one of the illustrations, but I wanted that alongside the Rider-Waite-Smith, because I feel like that imagery, the word that keeps coming to mind is gravitas. It has so much more gravitas for me than just looking at the Rider-Waite-Smith. Like that, it just seems like it interpolates you more, and you're in there with it, and almost draws you into the card. So that, I think that's great. And talking about it in this context makes me laugh. And I want to know what card that was on Mulder's desk. Like, come on, just the back of it. Like, what was it? Like, was it the Magus, the Fool? Come on. Like,
yeah.
We'll never know.
One of the things kind of cool about the Thoth Tarot, though, is that if you're doing this, approaching this deck as a reader, is that it does have the attributions on the card. Give you the zodiacal correspondence, the planetary one, and there's again, it's rich in imagery. So if you're kind of at a little bit of a loss as to what to as you're looking at this card, without going back to your guidebook, there's no lack of imagery to kind of latch onto as you're doing a reading, and that may make the richness of the symbolism, I think, may make it kind of challenging or daunting for somebody. It could be like information overload at the same time. It's just such a visually rich deck, and it really was the first deck that actually incorporated all of the Golden Dawn color correspondences in it. But so much more. They tried to incorporate scientific stuff and other deep mythology, and Crowley's take on thelema and so on. And as I mentioned, Frida Harris herself wanted to incorporate a lot of modern art movements into the design. So it's this, I don't know, it was this huge project, and that incorporates, that has so many sides to it. I just love talking about it, as you can probably tell.
Yeah, it's this cultural nexus, as you're stating about how it bringing in the esoteric stuff with with modern art, and then it does make sense that this would be so popular in in its use in popular culture, that and media, that it really does represent this coming together of all these different movements and ideologies, to create this experience of of connecting to these to these energies. I mean, it's so intense.
Yeah, and that's what's really cool to me, is that we're living at a time right now where other artists like Ethel Colquhoun and Hilma af Klint and Leonora Carrington and so on, are being recognized not only for their surrealistic artwork, but for their own interest in mysticism, and that they designed their own tarot decks and so on as well. So that whole nexus of art and occultism is becoming increasingly recognized, and that's again a very exciting thing to see.
And I want to thank Dr. Richard Kaczynski for joining us. And the new book, Friendship and Doubt, is out on Oxford University Press. And once again, thanks for joining us. It's great to have you.
Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. It was a pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
Well, that's it for our season finale of Pop Occulture, the Pop Occulture Show. And it's been 20 episodes. Lilith and I are very pleased to have had you join us, and we somewhat surprised that we made it through 20. And we've done some great stuff. And once again, if you haven't seen it, check out the Pop Occulture list on Lilith's YouTube channel. And we're going to take a little bit of a hiatus for summer fun. But yeah, we are going to take a look at maybe some new platforms, maybe get some new theme music, maybe maybe spice up the logo a little bit, something to because
we'd love to hear what people want. I'd love to hear what people want to see us do, right? Is there a show that you love? Is there a comic book? Is there a film that you can't live without with its witchy ways? Let us know, please.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much great stuff coming out. I mean, this fall we're going to have the Agatha All Along show on Disney with with Catherine Hahn, and of course, but also Aubrey Plaza and Capone are going to be witches in that.
What? Okay.
You're going to
ready.
Have to pitch Disney Plus at some point, or pirate it or something. That's coming out. So, the final season of Umbrella Academy is coming out.
Yes, Klaus forever.
And and at some point Sandman will return. Now they've just announced the rest of the Endless have been cast, and that looks really super cool. So can't wait for that. And yeah, so we will be able to join you for all the occult properties, and we will be here to discuss them, and we'll see you next season. Have a good summer, everybody.
Don't forget your reading list. Just kidding.
There you go.
Bye, everybody. See you later.
Enjoy those festival fires. Take care.